Hey everyone, welcome. This is Dan Hushon. Welcome to another DXC Tech Talk. This Tech Talk, we're going to drive right down the center of my definition of digital. That definition really is putting information to work to drive a massive scale productivity and growth within businesses. Because it really is my philosophy that digital is about taking the productivity advances we had from moving interoffice mail via paper to email in this next wave to moving and composing multiple records and information bases together to derive more value, to put decisions into context, and to fundamentally enhance the productivity and experience of employees, consumers, citizens, and partners alike. So really excited to be here today with Martin Risau, who runs our analytics practice, focusing in on the use of information within the business, and of course the CTO, Dragan Rakovich, who works for me and brings analytics into every one of our CTO discussions, as it really is the anchor of value in the modern enterprise. So welcome, guys. So I'd like to kind of kick off with some of the ground rules. So we're going to start today, as we usually do, with about 30 minutes of live discussion. We're going to be watching Twitter, so if there are questions, please put them up through crowd chat or in Twitter to us so that we can pull those questions down and bring them into the discussion. Immediately following this, you'll see a hyperlink. It's worldwideweb.crowdchat.net/DXC Tech Talk. This is a collaborative fusion that allows us to bring multiple social networks together into a single integrated conversation that allows each of you to use your tool of choice and yet be in a time series and conversation-centric model, so that it's much more easy to have a more in-depth conversation. So we're really excited. I'd like to remind everyone, both DXC employees, our partners, and our clients who are joining, that we are doing this out in the open internet. And as such, I'd like to ask each of you to make sure that what you're saying in public isn't going to get you into trouble. So please remember, these public environments are truly public, and so we have to just put that fair warning statement, that safe harbor statement, out there for each of you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to move right now to Martin Risau as the General Manager of our Information and Analytics Practice to really talk about what he's seeing in the marketplace. And then Dragan and I will talk a bit of tech.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining us. If Dan is asking about the customer needs and what we're seeing in the market, actually it's a good question, because we see a radical shift over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, I was in every meeting. I had to explain the value of data, of analytics, of back then mostly big data and so on. And customers were not ready, maybe testing a little POC here and there. But since then, it has shifted dramatically, because today we're not discussing with customers the why you should do this, but entirely the how, right? So everybody is driven in the context of digital transformation to say, how do I improve my business, right? How do I drive top line growth? How can analytics and AI help, or how am I getting more efficient? And the more efficient is actually, if you look at Gartner is saying that's 57% of all of the work that is out there. So sometimes we overlook that there is a huge business of making businesses more efficient. But if you take this and customers are driven by the how, what should I do and how can I do this? We're seeing 3 big themes in the market right now. The first one is, how do you empower your people and your network in your organization with data as an asset? Honestly, this is going on for now a couple of years, right? Whether you call it democratization of data, self-service tools, and so on, the visualization. And this is slowly maturing, I would say. I mean, you can see this, like Microsoft, has now Power BI, a great partner tool, right? You can see that the subscription from a perpetual business to subscription from Tableau, the leader in visualization. So the entire market is going slowly and getting mature there. But don't forget, there is still a lot of work to be done. And what is getting more and more important, there is a trend, is information governance, right? Because it was a bit of a wild, wild west. And, we had user access control, right, on ERP systems, SAP and so on. And then we're trying to democratize the data and giving this out. So there is a slim layer of information governance that is getting more and more important because maybe some companies went overboard. So that's the one thing. The second part is, customers coming to us and saying, help me with a business issue I have, right? A telco saying, how can I drive my churn? Because acquiring new customers is way more costly than retaining my existing customers. And what does the data tell me, and how can you help me in order to implement something that we're driving down churn with all of the interaction that customers have into our organization and all of the interaction that we have outside of our organization. And that's the reason why we see 11,000 specialized analytics vendors in the market, right? They pick one field, but again, companies have most of the time the problem, how do you integrate all of this, right? It's great if you have an algorithm that tells you, now I have a better churn calculation, right? And I can do something different. If you're not going to link this completely with all the inbound and outbound marketing that you're going to have, because that needs to be the engine, right? How you communicate with your customers. That's where we're helping our
cross-woven business, right? I mean, I think what I've seen certainly, and you've helped me see it, is that enterprises are beginning to stop thinking about analytics in stovepipes, right? Because stovepipes kind of sit here and say, yeah, you're the owner of information, you're reasoning on that information, and you're drawing out insights. But to act on those insights and to truly get the specificity of the insights, you have to cross-net the business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is what we're seeing again and again. But, this is a second category where customers are coming and saying, I have a very clear business objectives, and how can you help me? And then the third category is, what Dan talked about is, how do you bring analytics to everything, every transaction, everything that you're doing? We call this industrialized AI and analytics. And actually, help our customers, with an analytics workflow. And how do you implement something in the organization? For example, the data management and building data pipes is a starting point. If you don't have that, how do you train and develop models with the right data? So you need to train and develop models. You need data scientists for that. Even if you have now a model, right, you need to put the model into action. And here's where we have the combination with other DXC units. For example, our application area, right, where you have microservices, because you need to make sure that, the data and the algorithm and, the secret sauce is getting into the application layer, right? It's getting into a mobile phone and so on to alert customers directly. And then very often overlooked is, you need to test your models continuously, because quite honestly, if you have your business being run based on algorithms, right, you better test this, right? You better say what was the prediction and what the algorithm did. So the entire model management and so on is something that customers sometimes are not very keen to do. But if you think about, you have to do this. So integration with DevOps, for example, and so on. So that's the third category. So a first category to say, how do I enable, a player in my organization, also our partner, with data as an asset in a curated way with the right information governance. Customers having one very specific, business need. How do you help us? What is out there in the market, and how do I implement this, that this is working? And then industrialized AI and analytics. How do I make analytics and AI part of my everyday doing? It's ingrained in every of those transactions. Now, every customer is different, and everybody has a different starting point. So normally how we help our customers is with a maturity assessment. You can find this also on our website. It's called the Analytics IQ. We call it the Analytics IQ because everybody is doing something in analytics. If you go to credit card companies.
Before you go there, right? So can you tell me, so as you look at IQ, right? IQ is interesting because it's really fusing a number of underlying facets, right? Can you just give me an idea of what is it that rates a customer high in IQ? Can you give me 3 or 4 facets of the model?
It's what is important for a customer to conduct your business, for example. The ability to do analytics on unstructured data like video, audio is important for some customer. It's not important for other customers. And questions around this to say, what are your capability that you do things like linguistic analytics, like video analytics, and so on. So what is your capability? But then also, how important is that for you in order to do your business? Because obviously, if you're in oil and gas, video analytics is way more important for you and in healthcare, right, compared to other businesses. So this is one of the facets. How do you build, data pipes, right? Do you have a way of how in an industrialized way you can build data pipes? Again, what is your capability and how important is that for you? So it goes through, a set of criteria, what we have seen based on all of our interaction with customers, how you industrialize analytics to say, where are you? How important is that for you? And we bring to our customers, what are we seeing on their peers, right? What are we seeing for comparable companies, right? Where they're moving into. To then have the discussion, and I know, Dan, this is so important for you. Digital transformation starts with the business strategy to say, what is your business strategy? In order to break this down to say, where do you need to improve the fastest in order to do your business? I come back to a credit card company, obviously, centers a lot on fraud, right? And fraud analytics. Yeah. That's where they're great. But, if you go to the service center and the call center, that might be 3 floors down, right? The maturity is completely different. And we're helping our customers to say, hey, do you want to do this? Is that your core? Right. Or is, for example, somebody else better equipped in order to do this and have service call analytics to say, how do I avoid 80% of the calls?
Yeah. No, again, I'm right with you. I mean, the more sophisticated business moves from, what I'll call a single business unit analytic intention, right? Right. I have customer analytics that are running fairly well. And that's all great, but fundamentally, if I can acquire a customer, now the next thing they do is place an order. Well, how well am I actually bringing the context of the first engagement right into the ordering process? And then maybe I have an activation. Am I activating in a timely fashion that meets the needs of the client? And then, how am I actually servicing that customer post-sale? And am I doing that? And for me, those businesses that have IQ, right, it's kind of this organizational basis. There's this, an organization, what percentage of the organization is running from data-driven perspectives? So does that kind of link up with your thinking as well? So there is a sophistication, but there's also a breadth element here, right, of coverage.
There is an opportunity in threat coverage, and this is the starting point, right? And this is a little bit like the starting point of us working with customers to say, where are you there? Call it maturity, right? Analytics IQ. I like the concept because it is a positive concept to say everybody has an IQ, right? And honestly, everybody strives to have more. This is why we called it analytics IQ and not maturity assessment. To be very honest. Be free, by the way, to go to our website on DXC Analytics. You find this. You can do this, right? I mean, you can participate on that one. We don't mind. By the way, we love your, practical experience as well. If you're saying, there is a capability missing, which we believe is so important, right? I mean, we're more than happy to add it. I want to turn over to Dragan. If we're saying, we're trying to mature our customers on the analytics IQ, right? And do industrialize analytics and AI. Dragan, what are you seeing, more from a, technical to implementation point?
Before I let you go, though, I want to ask you one question. Are you seeing the buyer change in terms of really trying to, so, where is the conversation around putting information to work? Are you, is it the CXO, is it the C-suite at this point with you?
It is so different from every customer, but it is clearly outside of the CIO organization with the CXO. Because if you're saying the business strategy, most of the times the business strategy, if you review the business strategy today with the C-suite, you're coming very fast to data and analytics, as you call it, the fluid, right? Whether it's the raw data, right, the fluid or whatever it is, but it is an enabler that you need into the organization. So therefore, it is an entire C-suite topic. We're seeing more and more the chief data officer driving this, and it's interesting. Sometimes the chief data officer is, reporting to the CEO, sometimes to the CIO. For me, the topic is, not one area can drive this alone. If you think about the CIO as the governor and the steward of data and security, where it links together, you cannot do something without the CIO. On the other side, without the CXO, saying what is important in my business, how to improve, right? Is that core or context you cannot do. So we're constantly in the middle, and honestly, that's the strength between the CIO and the CXO. The CXO drives the agenda from what is important for me from my business. The CIO is driving the agenda and the chief data officer to say, how do we do this, that we have a real program and we don't have all of this 1,000, single instances where we're trying to improve, and then it's getting harder, right? Because if you want to industrialize analytics, right, you need to have the programs around it. So that's where we see.
Awesome. So now, I can't wait to have Dragan. I mean, he's a cohort with me in crime as a CTO. Really talking about the tools and platforms and services and capabilities and the nuts and bolts of having a high analytics IQ and the shift to artificial intelligence. There is one question, Dragan, maybe you can answer as you're going through the model, which is, what are some common mistakes that are made when adopting advanced analytics or even AI? And so, it's always great to give the positive, what are people doing, but it's probably also very valuable to talk about what are some of the mistakes that were made to help, give those waypoints to the listeners.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks, Martin, for the great intro. I just want to reflect on industrial analytics and what and AI and why is that important to for today's organizations to really achieve those benefits, business benefits that they're looking for from advanced analytics and AI. If you look at the common process for analytics, you access the data, you collect the data, you do some cleaning or data wrangling, you start doing some data science experiments, you generate some insights or analytic models, and the step that's frequently forgotten is that you actually have to deploy those models in production, right? So because that's when they fired as part of the front-end applications or parts of business process, it's really where the value is actually created for the organization. So you can approach this two ways, right? If you approach this in a more an ad hoc manner, which is, I think, what we see most organizations still doing today, that means you'll have a data scientist probably work on the data model, doing various iterations, figuring out what features to use and so on, data model, then turn it over maybe to somebody on the application side to hard code the data model in order to start using it as part of the business process and application. And while that delivers sort of immediate benefits, in the long run, really, it's really hard to monitor, right? What happens with the data model, the accuracy of the data model, the understanding, the value that's actually delivering to the business. So in my mind, that's probably the biggest challenge, approaching it in ad hoc manner, because then you can't scale, right? And more importantly, you lose track of what the models are doing eventually. So what we propose is this approach to industrialize analytics and AI, when you sort of build the data-centric foundation, including the engineer platform, right, infrastructure with the tools and software, right, to support it, to developing the data pipes and managing the data governance and security as part of it, and then developing and training data models as part of that whole platform and the whole process, to eventually deploying the models and optimizing them for performance, right? Because that's kind of a stuff you cannot forget. And then continuously monitoring and retraining the models. So monitoring includes not only just knowing that the model is running, but you also want to capture, right? What was the input into the model? What was the output of the model? And what action or decision was taken, right? Either overridden by a human being, right, or if it's automated, right, what fired. So you want to bring that back, right, into the data science area, right? And continuously sort of train and retain those models. And then obviously DevOps is critical, right? Because you won't be able to kind of move those things into through the production implementation and operations really quickly.
Fire hose you just gave us, right? So, so it really information dense. So you're coming, you're a man after my own heart. What's important, right, is that we are seeing organizations in a move towards a continuous improvement mode in their own analytics, right? So, confidence score improvement, right, is one thing that we hear about,
Absolutely.
really frequently in this time. And, what are some of the things that are really helping our clients improve those models, right? Is it the landscape of data that they make available, i.e. more data yields better outcome? Is it diverse data that actually helps improve it? What are you learning about there?
Yeah, I think it's it's both, right? You for machine learning models, you obviously need a lot of data, to say a lot, right?
Yeah.
In order to train them, right, you need you also need a variety of the data, right? So you need to bring data, combination of the data, like I think Martin was mentioning in automotive what we're doing, right? So it's not just telematics; it's the GPS, it's the camera, it's the every vibration, I think, on a car, and acceleration and so on. So bringing all this data, and then you probably want to overlay that with maps and so on, so you can see the whole picture. So the combination of the data is important as well.
Right. But maybe to add, Dragan, and what Dan was asking is, what is the single biggest improvement that we're seeing at customers once they decided for an analytics platform, honestly, because that is a little bit like, the point where customer is really getting seriously in there, and everything that Dragan said to say, what kind of data sources are important for you, right? And we talked about the analytics IQ, right? So how does your analytics platform need to look like? I mean, you need to build up the process, right? We talked about the analytics process. I talked about this, Dragan as well. But I think your question was, what is a big improvement on the customer side that we're seeing where they're making a step forward, whether we call it the analytics IQ or a maturity, you're getting more to the industrialization. Right. If a customer is really deciding for an analytics platform to say, what is important for me? What kind of data do I really need? What kind of capabilities do I need? And how do I offload all of the insight that I'm getting later on? What kind of microservices, what kind of processes and I'm linking in? That's at least something I'm seeing where a customer is making a very big step in the maturity forward from very isolated, smaller engagement. Everybody has X Hadoop instances in a big Fortune 5,000 companies that we're talking about, right? We're not short of finding them. Saying, how do you industrialize this? I think the galvanizing moment is a customer is really working to say, how does my analytics platform look like? Because that's the name platform. It's a very overused term in the industry, sadly enough, right? But in that moment, you decide, how does this thing need to look like? How am I building professionally data pipes, right? Who has access and is building models, right? How do I do the model management? So that's my take, where I'm seeing, okay, a customer is now not going with insulated, I need to fix this, and that, but rather, I really want to start industrial.
Yeah. So let me tease this apart just a little bit, because this is hard. When we talk about platform, right, I kind of see a couple of dimensions, and just tell me if I'm hunting in the right space. So I see a analyst toolbox, right, that helps them to wrangle their data, helps them to make sense of their data, helps them to reason over their data, i.e. Develop their models and improve them, helps them to share their models. And there's a whole productivity experience when you can begin to increase the collaboration capability within the organization, i.e. the organizational analytics IQ is not the same as the individuals, but how do I get the organization closer to the individual? But then there's also the platform that helps customers make their data more accessible broadly. And so as we talk about platform, which of those two dimensions of the analytics, the productivity of the analyst, the productivity of the enterprise, which is putting the enterprise analytics to work, and then the data management and the platform effects of concentrating the enterprise data's value. Is it all of those?
It's both, Dan. If you want to do continuous improvement, right, you need the platform that's very easy to disseminate the information and the data throughout the organization. At the same time, you need the ability for data scientists to do it, use it in a very flexible manner, right? Because sometimes, data models that are good for enterprise are not necessarily good for data science. But what I would like to add, right, in going into the industrialized analytics and AI, what we are seeing with our clients is that they're looking more for the platform as a service, right? Maybe like a DXC analytics platform that we offer to our clients, but also cloud instances, right? With Microsoft Azure, with AWS, with IBM as well, and that is become a real trend now, right? So focus on where the value is, right? Not building the platform.
Right, but let's just talk real quickly, because I'm a fan of data gravity, and I actually believe that data has both gravity and unfortunately friction. So some of the decisions around picking the right, there might not be such thing as a singularity of platforms for the enterprise, right? They may begin to concentrate data in different places for different use cases. But there is always the challenge of, once I begin to suggest that I don't have one data pool, but I have a set of pools that operationalize my data. Are you guys bumping into those challenges, and do you have any guideposts for the people that are listening? Because we do have about 200 people on this live chat.
Yeah, so I think we started on that track with our hybrid data management architecture long ago, and we do actually have a reference architecture to help our clients, right, understand how to cross between the different clouds and internal systems, right, where the data resides, as well as how to combine the data from traditional BI data warehousing, as well as the new sort of big data analytics realm.
Let's take this one into the crowd chat, because the crowd chats, I think, where the real insights come out of these kind of conversations, when we bring the crowd in. But before we do that, I want to let Martin really talk about some of the industry examples to just ground the problem in everyone's mind before we jump into the crowd chat. So Martin, about 2 minutes. You think you can give us a couple of use cases that help everyone listening come into the crowd chat with perspective?
2 minutes is tough, but for example, healthcare, right? If you and I are going to a doctor, right, they're taking an X-ray, a blood test, the doctor's seeing you 2 times and so on. What happened, with one of our customers is that they had, hundreds of so-called coders. They would take all of the various data sources, right, in order to put what has been done for and with you, right, into a code according to standards, IDC-10, and so on, in order to then later on put it into a software and have the billing being done. So we industrialized machine learning for them in order to, pose actually the various codes, which number one, drove a huge efficiency, because now coder can concentrate, on the complicated cases that, the algorithms cannot do. Huge efficiency. Second, we also removed lots of human error, which we tested in the model, and we saw how much human error was in the system. But then, the fundamental way how you're doing business, differently is this gives you now the basis to see what is happening in your enterprise, in that case, a university, because certain doctors all of a sudden start prescribing different medicine with blood tests, what they didn't do before. So now you can manage your organization totally different. That might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing, right? And why are only some doctors doing this and others are not? So now you start really doing business completely different. That's a healthcare example, right? I'm a German, so I need to talk about automotive. What really drives me, autonomous driving until level 5, right? When I'm not have to drive any longer, I go on the racetrack. So we're helping our customers, right? Those test cars right now, they're full of radar, HD stereo camera, and so on. And they, in an 8-hour shift, are getting 2.5 terabyte of data, right? How do you get this data out of the car pretty quick in order to decrease the time to analytics? Because, an automotive maker has R&D facilities and actually data scientists and analysts and engineers, and they're thirsty for all of the data. So how do you get this data quickly out so that they can work on autonomous driving really quick and reduce the time? Also reduce the R&D time. I give you a very simple, maybe stupid example. In the past, you need to demonstrate before you release a car that, if you have the lights on the auto switch, if you go into a tunnel or it's getting dark, that the lights is going on. So in the past, automotive maker would drive with their test cars like hundreds of times into a tunnel, right? When it's getting dark to document, the lights are really going on. Yeah, guess what? We now have HD stereo cameras, right? So the algorithms can do this automatically and say, was there ever any case, right, where you went into a tunnel and the lights did not go on, right? And it's documented and so on. So that reduces the time of development for an automotive maker. Now, I can go on in every industry, right? We have those great examples.
We have tons. Oil and gas, natural resource, we've got them all. So I'm right there with you. So let's go over onto the crowd chat. I'm going to remind everyone that we are at crowdchat.net/DXC TechTalk. We're all heading over there right now to continue this conversation. We will be doing another one of these Tech Talks on October 19th. And here we're really going to talk about, I think, one of the huge productivity improvements in most enterprises. Hopefully what I call it is giving the employees the tools that they really need to get their work done. And doing that both for the employee and the community that they want to be a part of. So we're going to talk about that with Maria Pardee and Mark Wilkinson. So join us on the 19th, mark your calendars. And for now, I'm going to take everyone out of here and let's go over to crowdchat.net/DXC Tech Talk. Thank you very much.